Thanks for joining me on episode 1000 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Jared Williams with Biblical Wealth Solutions. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to invest without compromising your Christian values is key, and one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Mader.
So the truth is, whether you make a lot or whether you make a little, whether you're struggling with money because you've got that feeling of I make too much money to be this broke, or you're struggling because you're in crisis and living paycheck to paycheck, affecting and improving your money can also affect and improve your health. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's episode about investing in yourself through stewarding your treasures, I talk with you about the health and wealth connection. I also share 10 connections that come from health and wealth, and I also share some ways you can improve your health and money. As we talk about stewarding your treasures, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without costing yourself an extra dime? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show. If you enjoy the show when you're ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. You probably heard the expression that health is better than wealth, or that without good health, wealth becomes useless. And that's definitely got some truth. But there's also truth that when we look at it, there is a connection between money and physical and psychological health, because financial stress, as we've talked about, can cause poor physical and psychological health, which then creates more stress, which creates bad money decisions, and so on. That's a feedback loop that we've talked about before. So it's really not a question of is health better than wealth? Should I pay attention to my physical health or should I pay attention to my financial health? Instead, this is another case of a both and, where paying attention to both is important, because without good financial caretaking, your physical and psychological health will be affected. There are ways that debt and poor money habits can affect your mind. It shows up as depression. It shows up as a money insecurity that leads to this feeling of hopelessness at times. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you have a feeling of being trapped in that situation and giving up hope that it will ever change. You can have a feeling of anxiety because you become hyper vigilant about everything that can go wrong. Because if anything goes wrong without an emergency fund, without the ability to financially navigate it, you have both whatever the emergency is plus a financial emergency. And so that leads to a feeling of anxiety. It can lead to feelings of low self-esteem, feeling like we're somehow lesser than others. And it can even affect our memory and our ability to do our work and do our job. It can affect things physically as well. It shows that consistent stress around money creates high blood pressure and can create headaches. I've seen people get better from something like that simply by getting their money under control. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that cures high blood pressure, but in some cases, if it reduces stress, it can certainly help those situations. You also often, as we've talked about before, can have sleep problems, which then lead to additional health problems. You have weight gain. You have the feeling that you can't go to the doctor because you can't afford it, which creates a problem where if you have health issues, those health issues can expand and can add on and can get worse and worse. So there's many different ways that your health and your wealth can be connected, both physically and psychologically. But the truth is, if you can affect your money health, you can affect your physical health. So there are ways to physically handle stress, like we've talked about before: physical activity, setting small goals, learning to meditate, doing better diet, getting better sleep, setting aside times for reflection and rest, keeping an orderly environment. All of these things can help your health and help your stress level, but so can actually working on your money, setting down and having a money plan, a budget, setting down and working with someone else to figure out what is it that's keeping me in the paycheck to paycheck cycle, and what are the next steps that I can take to begin to move out of that. What are the things that I can do to have a business plan that allows me to grow and develop? What is it that I can do that will allow me to have a plan around my money that allows my money to get better each time instead of getting worse and worse? What is it that I can do to inject hope back into my life through getting control of my money? See, believe it or not, having a spending plan and then tracking against that plan and reviewing it and then reflecting on it and making changes in either the plan or in your behavior as appropriate can actually improve your stress level. And if your stress level gets better, then your physical health can get better. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, I'm not holding this up as a cure-all. This is not, hey, if you get your money in order, then all of your physical illnesses will go away. That would be the last thing I would be the one to suggest. But what I am saying is it can help your stress, which then can show up in your psychological and in your physical well-being. Plus, it allows you access to medical care. Because if your money is not in order, it is hard nowadays to pay for insurance, to get to see a doctor, to have the medications that you may need. I know people that have had to choose between eating and paying for their medication. But the truth is, you can change that. It's not easy. It takes work and it takes time, but it can happen. I've seen people do it. So the truth is, whether you make a lot or whether you make a little, whether you're struggling with money because you've got that feeling of I make too much money to be this broke, or you're struggling because you're in crisis and living paycheck to paycheck, affecting and improving your money can also affect and improve your health. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of treasures, you can sign up for our treasures tips by going to inspiredstewardship.com/treasures or text in the U.S. 44222 treasures tips. And we'll send you 5 weeks of our best tips on stewarding your treasures. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.